Hello, I'm Ndimyake Mwakalyelye. Vincent Makori is off today. This is Africa 54. Well, tonight, Egypt's military-backed government is continuing its crackdown on members of the Muslim Brotherhood, the power Islamist group behind ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Meantime, Egypt's Western allies are reconsidering their support for the new leadership in Cairo. We have two reports, beginning with VOA's Elizabeth Arrott in the Egyptian capital.
Egyptian authorities say they've arrested Mohamed Badia, the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood. Badia is the most influential member taken into custody in a widespread crackdown against the Islamist group. Security has rounded up not just hundreds of street supporters, but leadership from the top all the way down to grassroots organizers. Officials say Badia was detained in Cairo's Nasser city, near the anti-government sit-in at Rabaa, crushed by security forces last Wednesday. Human Rights Watch is calling that operation the worst unlawful mass killing in Egypt's modern history. His son Amr was killed in subsequent protests. Badia had been the focus of wrath at rallies held throughout the past year, seen as the true power behind Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. Mr. Morsi was ousted by the military July 3rd and is being held in an undisclosed location. Amir Bassam, on the board of the Brotherhood's political wing, spoke to VOA by telephone from an undisclosed location in Greater Cairo. He said, despite the many arrests, it's impossible to eliminate the Brotherhood, as it represents what he called a genuine, integral, working part of Egyptian society. But popular anger at the nation's millions of Islamists continued to climb, especially after suspected militants killed 25 police officers in Sinai Monday. On state media, news of the deaths far overshadowed the deaths of some 36 protesters while in custody. Even as more Brotherhood leaders are detained, the man whose rule sparked Egypt's upheavals back in 2011 appeared to be one step closer to freedom. Officials said Monday ex-President Hosni Mubarak, currently in prison awaiting further trials, could be released in the coming days. Elizabeth Arrott, VOA News, Cairo.
Well, back here in the United States, pressure is mounting on U.S. President Barack Obama to cut off aid to Egypt amid the ongoing violence and unrest. As VOA's Michael Bowman reports, administration officials say Washington's ability to influence events in Egypt is limited.
With hundreds of pro-Morsi demonstrators dead as the Egyptian military continues its crackdown, the Obama administration is sidestepping calls to suspend more than $1 billion in military aid to the country. Monday, the administration delivered a unified, if non-committal, message. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel.
We're reviewing every aspect of our relationship with Egypt.
State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki.
We are reviewing places where adjustments need to be made, and we will make those as needed.
White House spokesman Josh Earnest says the review comes at the direction of President Barack Obama.
That review is ongoing, and that review is being made in light of actions that are taken by the interim Egyptian government.
Earnest described factors being considered if aid were curtailed or suspended.
What impact it would have on our national security, whether it's in compliance with the law, and is it going to get us closer to seeing the kind of outcome in Egypt that we would like to see, which is the prompt return to a democratically elected civilian government in Egypt.
Egypt provides key assets to the United States, like preferential passage through the Suez Canal, and Cairo has maintained its peace treaty with Israel. Secretary Hagel says he has had many phone calls with Egypt's military chief, General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, in hopes of ending the bloodshed, but acknowledged the following.
Our ability to influence the outcome in Egypt is limited. It's up to the Egyptian people. It will be their responsibility to sort this out.
Sunday, several prominent U.S. lawmakers urged a cutoff of aid to Egypt. Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte.
I think the military has gotten the impression, and particularly with what the president not asking for aid to be suspended when he spoke this week, that whatever they do, we will continue our aid.
Even if Western aid were curtailed, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says Arab nations would provide a helping hand to Egypt. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, joining us now with more details on the U.S.-Egypt aid issues, VOA State Department correspondent Scott Stearns, who joins us from the State Department. Thanks for joining us, Scott.
Sure thing, Ndimyake.
So it seems, based on the report, a lot of the administration officials are saying that they are still reviewing the aid to Egypt. But it seems, based on some reports, they've actually done it. They've actually cut off aid to Egypt. What's the truth?
A spokesman for the chairman of the Senate subcommittee that oversees foreign operations, Senator Patrick Leahy, says that the Obama administration has told them that they have secretly suspended military assistance, but are not yet comfortable with making that public. Now, as you heard in the Mike Bowman spot there, across the administration, the official line remains that all of that aid is under review. Of the $1.5 billion, by far the largest amount, $1.23 billion, is military assistance. There's been some reporting this week that there was a blanket ban on some smaller portion of the balance that would go to the government itself. And Jen Psaki, in comments in the same briefing that you saw there, said that that is not the case, that that aid at present still remains operational.
Now, Scott, in addition to the aid that the U.S. gives to Egypt to enable the military there, what about what the U.S. receives? We've heard in this package how the U.S. does have some kind of preferential access to the Suez Canal. It has overflight rights through Egypt to its bases. And of course, it counts on Egypt to maintain peace with Israel. How much does that factor into how the U.S. responds to the situation in Egypt?
Well, obviously, all three of those are key, and losing any of them would be significant for the United States. But I don't know that one can necessarily make the assumption that the suspension of some aid to the Egyptian government would directly result in the abrogation of all of those issues. Now, certainly security in the Sinai is an issue that is of great interest to the Egyptian military and relies largely on cooperation with Israel. So there are disincentives for the Egyptians just themselves in abrogating the deal with Israel outside of any concerns involving the United States.
Thank you, Scott. I want to change subjects a little bit now. I want to go over to Zimbabwe. The U.S. was asked by the Southern African Development Community and other groups to drop sanctions on Zimbabwe, citing its recent election that it was free, fair, and credible, which I know the U.S. has disagreements on some parts of. But it says it will not drop those sanctions, correct?
That's correct. The United States says that, in its opinion, the election now certified by Zimbabwean courts that re-elected President Robert Mugabe was not free and fair, was not an accurate representation of the will of the voters of Zimbabwe. And so the United States will maintain its sanctions against Zimbabwe, which have been in place now for more than 10 years, until there is progress toward greater transparency in the electoral process.
How do you see the relationship with the U.S. and Zimbabwe going forward? Because obviously the U.S. is now under a very precarious situation where the AU and SADC and other groups are saying the elections were free, they met the mandate, so why is the U.S. still withholding? How do you see the relationship going forward?
Well, the Obama administration says that it certainly appreciates the support of SADC and the African Union in this process and continues to hope to work with both of those organizations. You know, moving forward, obviously, the Obama administration is in a position where how do you best push for greater transparency in an electoral process that has now come to its end, at least, for the short to medium term, with the re-election of the president. The plea by the chairwoman of SADC, the Malawian President Joyce Banda, that the Zimbabwean people have suffered enough, and that's why sanctions should be suspended. The Obama administration says that it's certainly aware of the suffering of the people of Zimbabwe, and that assistance, especially funding for HIV, continues.
Okay. Well, Scott Stearns, thank you so much for your insights onto both those issues, Egypt and Zimbabwe.